Okay, my ideas for the future of Africa. I was very frustrated at African Americans, but it seems that I've found something useful to say for the future of Africa. And it was controversial, but there is a conflict of interests in Africa, human versus wildlife. And a lot of nations are coercively pressuring Africa not to industrialize so that wild animals can be have a lot of range and a large population. Well, most of the elephants are gone. Probably 95% of elephants have been killed and eaten. So elephants, we need to have more elephants in the world. So one of my ideas for Africa was that some of these species from Africa should be hosted in other nations. So giraffes and elephants should be in places like South America and Australia, and maybe also, well, maybe giraffes in South Asia and India. So Africans, well, they don't like the idea of giraffes being, some of them might not like the idea of giraffes being in other places because they evolved in Africa and they draw tourists to Africa. However, Africa has to industrialize and have industrial agriculture. So there's going to be less habitat for giraffes and elephants when Africa does more industrial scale agriculture. So there should be a larger population of giraffes than can be supported in the future of Africa when Africa has mechanized, industrialized agriculture. So therefore, giraffes should be in Brazil and Argentina, and elephants should be in Brazil and Argentina. Giraffes should be in Australia, northern Australia, and elephants should be in northern Australia. And gorillas, well, they also are having their loss of habitat, causing male gorillas are killing each other because of their starvation. So male gorillas in the wild are killing each other because of starvation. How do I know? Because there's ongoing encroachment on their wilderness habitat. So they have less territory from which to feed themselves. So gorillas also should be in South America and in Australia and in North America and in South Asia. And I said gorillas should have a right to, gorillas who are isolated and stranded, such as those who are kept in places, usually a zoo, which is sort of a strange thing to consider them to be a plain an animal when they're a humanoid. They're so close to the human species that it's right to call them a human type of a creature. Different species from human, but they're not really an animal per se. So gorillas who are in small social groups of less than 50 gorillas should have access to know that each other exist in different places, to see each other on video screens, and to arrange to meet each other and to have gorilla meetings where they select each other and then they travel to meet each other, and so that they can have social mobility between their archipelago of gorilla settlements here and there. So there should be gorillas in China, there should be gorillas in India, there should be gorillas in South America and North America. And those gorillas, there should not be fewer than 20 gorillas in a settlement. There should not be fewer than 20. And so maybe some Africans don't like that idea of gorillas being in other places besides Africa. And the ones actually that have been other places besides Africa, those gorillas have been, well, not very well off because there's too few of them in each settlement, sometimes just one by themselves. So gorillas should have the sort of a bill of rights, like human rights, humanoid rights, um, almost human type uh, of a hominid, or whatever you want to call them, hominid rights. They should have the right to know that each other exists, and the right to travel to meet each other. Um, and they should get to eat what they want to eat. Like a person will want to eat fried chicken. Gorillas should not have a bad diet of just, vegetation. They're probably carnivores. They probably would eat a chimpanzee. Um, so gorillas might be also scavengers who would eat other meat that they might find. I don't know. They have carnivore teeth and they probably want to eat meat once in a while. Not just once in a while, but maybe once a week or more. So these are the most iconic species of Africa: the giraffe, the elephant, and the gorilla. And they should be in other nations outside of Africa. And this is because Africa has to have industrial scale agriculture. So Africa's not going to have as much space for gorillas in their wild habitat, and Africa's not going to have as much space for giraffes in their wild habitat. And so these animals actually need to be living in other nations besides the African nations, so that Africa can be free to do industrial scale agriculture and other industrial developments without being pressured and coerced by the rest of the world to remain without much industrial development in Africa. So that's a controversial viewpoint. It started out, I was angry at African Americans. I was in an adversarial state of mind. And I was like, Africans are kind of keeping these animals hostage. They're kind of keeping a monopoly on them because just for control, and to have to draw tourists in. But there's people who have been not very nice to gorillas, meaning they didn't keep enough gorillas. They brought one gorilla out, and that one gorilla was sad. They brought one gorilla out of their social group, and they had only humans. They were among only humans. That's happened to some chimpanzees too, with tragic consequences. So a group of gorillas has to be at least 20 adults. Both half of them should be female or more, and there should be at least 20 of them, not fewer, in a settlement of gorillas. And it shouldn't be a zoo. They should have an area. They should be voluntary whether they want to socialize with strangers, and they shouldn't be required to be visible for viewing by strangers, as if they were just an animal. So we have to say that people have not always been kind to gorillas and chimpanzees because they didn't have enough of them. A chimpanzee should never be stranded as an individual among people. There should always be a social group of chimpanzees, so that they don't feel so that they are not individually isolated among people. That drives them crazy. And so on with gorillas. And they need to be fed in Africa. They need to be fed in Africa because they're killing each other. I guarantee you, male gorillas are killing each other because of not enough food. So that's not natural behavior. They wouldn't be killing each other as often as they are. They must be killing each other as their wilderness habitat region is reduced by human encroachment. Gradually, more and more encroachment, less and less wilderness habitat for themselves to support their diet, and then the males kill each other. It's like a humanitarian crisis. So anyway, that's my concept, was ARC ships to collect hundreds of animals, like take a cruise ship with some walls and floors removed to make a bigger, like an atrium space inside of a cruise ship, and then fill it up with animals from Africa, like hundreds of giraffe and on one ARC ship, and then bring them to another location, hundreds of elephants on, or 50 elephants on a ship, bring them to another location, and get a significant population of these animals outside of Africa, so that Africa can industrialize without that conflict of interest between humans and animals. There's a conflict of interest. It's happening now. There's not enough elephants left. There should be a larger population of elephants. And what's happening is that the bigger elephants are dying out because of human pressure causing natural selection to favor smaller elephants. So the large giants of the elephants of Africa are not getting having more difficulties to survive and reproduce because they're so big that it's more difficult for them to have enough to eat. So there's dwarf elephants, like they call them forest elephants, which maybe they're all turning into forest elephants because they're all turning into dwarf elephants because so many of the big ones have died from starvation. And so Africa has to mechanize their industrial agriculture so that they can feed the elephants with mechanically harvested food, and also feed the giraffes so that there can be big specimens, not only smaller and smaller giraffes and smaller elephants. And they also have to feed the gorillas. And that's more work than Africans are prepared to do. So it's a major conflict of interest between the wilderness and the animal species and the gorillas and the African people themselves. It's a major conflict of interest that needs global cooperation to relieve the Africans of too much responsibility that they're not handling and will not be able to handle anytime soon. All right, that's enough for this video.